Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to Day 3 of official Dominaria previews. Yesterday was a huge day, Monday was a huge day. Today we're seeing a few more cards that are maybe more limited-centric, but there are a lot of good ones in here too. We're seeing a new land cycle, for example, at Uncommon, which is kind of interesting. And we're also going to be looking at, of course, more legendary creatures, because this is Dominaria after all. So quickly before we get started, though, just a fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to help support what we do here at the channel, one of which is our Patreon page. You'll also find product links to Amazon below. Once you go through that first link, actually, no matter what you buy on Amazon, we'll get a small percentage for the channel. And then finally, Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code for our viewers. And you can hopefully save some cash and help the channel at the same time. So, as always, thank you to not only the folks to look at those links, but to all of you for viewing and participating in this community. Thank you. With that being said, let's get into it. Quickly before we get into the brand new cards, I just wanted to show you this construct token. So this goes along with Karn, which we saw yesterday. I'll link that video at the end in case you missed it. But I thought the art was cool. Just wanted to show it to you. Baird, Steward of Argiv. 2 white and 2, legendary creature, human soldier, uncommon 2/4, vigilance. Creatures can attack you or planeswalker you control, unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. First and limited, yeah, great card. I mean, forecasting cost 2/4 vigilance. Very defensive card, but it's going to make your opponent jump through some hoops to attack. It's a nice blocker, can also attack in and still remain back for defense. All of that, I think, is pretty good for 4 mana. Standard, yeah, this will see standard play. Maybe it's out of the sideboard for certain matchups, like more aggressive builds that don't have a lot of excess mana available to them. Or perhaps a go-wide strategy, token strategy. And there are cards that lend itself towards those strategies within this set, so it's nice to have something like this available in case you need it. Commander jumps right to my mind when I look at this card, because I can't help but think another card for Pillow Fort. But there's also some wacky things you can do with it. Now, it is legendary, so copying it would be awesome, but you're going to need to put the pieces together. Maybe Rite of Replication along with Mirror Gallery could be kind of interesting for commander purposes. Just going to leave that right there for you. But overall, it's actually a pretty good card. Another strong, uncommon legendary creature. Okay, Sage of Latnam. This is a 2/1 human artificer, uncommon 1/2. Tap, sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. This is going back a little ways. This is actually a reprint from Antiquity, so a lot of history here, which is cool. This did get a reprint as well in 8th edition, so it is technically modern legal. You probably don't see it there very often, though, because it's honestly not that great of a card. If I'm playing limited and I have a lot of artifacts or maybe some sort of artifact token creation or something, who knows what's still to come from this set, then yeah, okay, maybe I run it to advance my deck a little bit quicker, but the problem with the card ultimately is it's very slow. The stats aren't super impressive. A 1/2 for 2 isn't really exciting in this day and age, right? Even in limited. Beyond that, okay, now I have to play the card. I have to wait till it no longer has summoning sickness. Now if I choose to, I can tap it, sacrifice a creature just to get a card. I'm doing a lot here. Now, granted, like I said, there are times where it's not going to be the worst thing in the world and you might play it, but I think a lot of the times it doesn't even make your cut in limited, unfortunately. This next card is actually very reminiscent of some of the old large sea creatures you used to see in Magic, like Leviathan and Polar Kraken. Not as big as those two, but this is Slyn Voda, the Rising Deep. 2 blue and 6, legendary creature Leviathan, uncommon 8/8, kicker, 2/1. When this enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return all creatures to their owner's hands except for merfolk, krakens, leviathans, octopuses, and serpents. Alright, so let me get this out of the way. A little too expensive for standard. Even control decks looking for finishers have a lot of better options out there. They're more resilient. Limited, do you play this though? I think you could actually. 8 mana for an 8/8 is not the worst thing in the world. Definitely, it's going to have big board presence. It doesn't have trample or evasion, and sure, it can get blown up by removal just like anything else, and you're putting a lot of resources into it. But if you play it at the right time, maybe towards the end of the game when you're in a board stall or something like that, it is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Your opponent's either going to have to find an answer, or they're going to have to chump block with multiple creatures, which might give you the advantage on the board at that point. So, yeah, it's not bad. And if you can swing the extra 2 mana and return everything other than the cards listed there to their owner's hands, yeah, that could be perhaps game-winning in the right situation. And remember, there is a little bit of light ramp, at least in the set. You have the Line of War Elves and maybe some other stuff going on too. So, yeah, I do think it's very playable. High end of the curve, it's very high end of the curve. And there are a lot of good high-end legendary creatures, so maybe it doesn't always make your cut, but I do think that in some pools this will be just fine and you'll run it. Aside from that, if you want to mess around in Commander with some Merfolk, Amina has a lot of people working on Merfolk builds, this could fit in there. Or you could get a little crazier and go for Merfolk, Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. That could be kind of fun, of course, although Merfolk's probably going to be a little better. Tellurian Scholar. Okay, this was the professor's preview card, and if you didn't see his reveal video, you gotta check it out. It was one of my favorites. I always love his reveal videos, but this one was especially funny. Now, much like they joke around in the video, yeah, the card isn't all that good. It is a blue and 2 human wizard common 2/3. That's it. So what do you do with this thing? Well, first off, let's just talk about limited and leave it at that. Is it playable ever at all? Sometimes. I mean, it's a wizard, and there are wizard synergies. If you're all in on that wizard archetype in draft or something, this is a way to get a wizard on the battlefield if you need a way to get a wizard on the battlefield. Also, sometimes you just need a curve filler, especially in sealed. You just might need a 3-drop, and this is a serviceable one. The 2/3, it can defend you against some creatures, but also, too, I mean, at 3, it just doesn't feel good. Like, something like a 2-drop 1/3 would be better at defending you against maybe hyper aggro creatures because you can get it down faster, right? So that's a little disappointing overall, but yeah, you will play it some of the time, but just not really very often, unfortunately. Divest. Okay, probably my favorite card of the day. It costs a black. It's a sorcery common. Target player reveals their hand. You choose an artifact or creature card from it. That player discards that card. First off, it goes right into standard. Sideboards, but even maybe main decks, I think it hits enough important targets that I wouldn't be shocked to see this thing main decked. It gets Hazaret, it gets the Scarab God, because remember, the Scarab God isn't dying, it's being discarded, so it'll stay in the graveyard. It gets Rekindling Phoenix, it gets Glorybringer. These are all important targets right now in Standard, and there's many, many others I can list too. So that's kind of awesome. Also, you get information from what's in your opponent's hand, and that's also very critical. Now, here's what's interesting about the card, though, aside from all of that. It is a target player effect. Now, in recent history, when they made these type of cards, they've been target opponent. This is target player, so I can target myself and force a discard, which means if I want to start building or start brewing a deck that's thinking about some graveyard shenanigans, this is a good place to start. Now, yesterday I said that I really think a reanimation deck eventually will get there. Don't know if all the pieces will be in this set. Well, we are one huge step closer to that. Again, I don't know if all the pieces will be in this set. Maybe we have to wait for more cards to enter the standard format. The problem is reanimation decks have to be really fine-tuned. So they have to have the perfect amount of control to protect yourself and protect the creature, the right amount of reanimation, the right amount of discard, the right amount of self-mill. And in standard formats where you have a limited pool of cards, that is very difficult to pull off. I hope it happens. I guess we'll see as time goes on, but this is a big step towards it happening, and I think that's pretty awesome. Also, this is a common. You can play it in Pauper. That's pretty awesome, too, because it's a very economical card for a very economical format, actually, and I'm sure it will see play in decks there. Modern, well, it's not going to push Thoughtseize out of the game. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe someone uses one of these here and there in a sideboard as a redundancy, but again, there's other cards out there that will do similar things even better. So I don't think it's a big card there necessarily, but I really like this design, and yes, that art's pretty awesome too. Get to Chronicler. This is a red and 1 creature, human wizard, another common 1/3 kicker, red and 3. When this enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Well, limited, it can be okay for you. Like, again, it might not always make your build, but I'm going to try to play this as long as I don't have maybe too many good removal spells. Basically, the way I look at this is I want to play this with a kicker to get back one of my removal spells, but I'm not going to play it in lieu of a removal spell. I'm not going to leave a removal spell in my pool to throw this into my deck, right? So it depends on my pool. It sees play probably part of the time it doesn't. It is a little awkward. I mean, that kicker, you're paying for it. 2 red and 4 to get the spell back, but I do think that can be worth it in limited because the removal spells are just such a commodity in those formats in draft and sealed, so that alone makes me play it. If I don't main deck it for some reason and I have a super aggressive matchup, I might bring it in just as an early blocker because it is a nice 1/3 blocker for 2. Also, it is a wizard. Yeah, that can be relevant some of the time as well. So not a bad card. It won't always make your cut. Maybe a good middle to late pack pickup and draft, and it could do some things and surprise you here and there. Next card comes to us from a Japanese language preview, and loosely translated, it comes out to be Two-Headed Giant. I hope that's really the name, because I'll be disappointed now if it's not. 2 red and 2, it's a giant warrior. Whenever Two-Headed Giant attacks, flip 2 coins. If both come up heads, it gains double strike until end of turn. If both come up tails, it gains menace until end of turn. It's a 4/4. Alright, so this is an interesting rare right here. I'm going to give him points for nostalgia, though, because when you think old school Magic, you think of flipping coins, especially with some of these red cards from the old days, and it kind of brings that flavor back, and I do like that. Also, Two-Headed Giant, of course, not only being a reference to the game type, but also Two-Headed Giant of Faris, which is a classic Magic card. So there's a lot going on here that I like from a flavor point of view, if nothing else. Card itself, do I play it? In Limited, I think it's fine. I mean, you have to look at it this way. You can't count on activating those abilities. So if you're happy playing a 4/4 for 4, then this card is going to be good for you, and every once in a while it surprises you. And I think that's just fine for draft or sealed. Not a high draft pick necessarily, maybe middle to later portion of the pack. But if you need a sizable creature for 4, I mean, this is not the worst thing. Sometimes there'll be better things, though, I do think. And if you have something better, then skip it. But if you don't, just go ahead and run it. Again, just don't count on the abilities ever happening because they're just too high variance. And because of that, you're not going to see this in Standard or anything like that. It's, again, just too high variance. But, like I said, I do give them points for nostalgia. Grun the Lonely King. Aw. 2 green and 4. Legendary creature, Ape Warrior. Uncommon, kicker 3, 5/5. If Grun the Lonely King was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 5+1/+1 counters on it. When this attacks alone, double its power and toughness until end of turn. And this was the Commander in YouTube channel's preview card, and it's actually pretty sweet for Commander. I'm going to say that right off the bat, because could you imagine if this is your Commander, like pushing across that kind of Commander damage as fast as you can? If you kick it, wonderful. Even if you don't kick it, a 5/5 that's actually attacking in is a 10/10. Yeah, that is not bad. So I could see this getting some play in Commander. It does feel very, very aggressive. Standard, I mean, a 5/5 with these abilities for 6, or, of course, if you pay the kicker a little more, feels okay, but the problem is I think it's competing with things like Carnage Tyrant, and if there is a green Stompy deck out there, or even the Monsters decks that already exist, I don't really see myself trying to put this in there, even though it's a really interesting card and really cool. It's missing a few things. It's missing consistency because of the kicker. It's missing trample or any kind of evasion. It just can be a large creature, and also you have to attack alone with it to get the ability to trigger. So that could be awkward, especially in Monsters or Stompy decks where you might have other creatures you want to attack with, then this thing isn't doing a lot. So don't really see it there. In Limited, yeah, pick it up. This is going to be a bomb for you. This is a big creature that your opponent's going to have to find an answer to. They can chump block it for a while, but eventually that's not going to work, and they're going to have to do something better. So it's an uncommon, too, so these will be showing up in drafts here and there. Definitely something to keep an eye out for. Oath of Teferi. This is a blue, white, and 3 legendary enchantment. It's a rare. When Oath of Teferi enters the battlefield, exile another target permanent you control. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. You may activate the loyalty ability of planeswalkers you control twice each turn rather than only once. Well, Teferi's taking the oath. This is an interesting card, but the big question is, where do you play it? I mean, it does cool stuff. I would love to activate planeswalkers twice a turn. I like flickering a lot, but that casting costs 5, 2 different colors. That's going to be hard to swing, and the effect is kind of narrow. I mean, you need a specific situation for it to work. So I'll tell you where I'm not playing this. It's not going to be Standard, that's for sure. Because as cool as it would be to use this with, say, Teferi Planeswalker or something, it just isn't guaranteed. And that's a lot of mana to spend for a card that could be stuck in your hand not doing a whole lot. So it's not going to make it there. Limited, it's weird too, because you really want to play this with a Planeswalker, and you don't have too many options there. If you get Jaya, you probably still aren't going to have synergy because she has 3 red in her casting cost, and of course this says white and blue. That could be really tough to swing in most cases. Now, if you get the other 2 planeswalkers, if you got Karn or Teferi, they do interact well from a mana point of view, but again, you have to get both this card and one of those cards out at the same time. I mean, how often are you going to get this and one of those two planeswalkers for starters? And then even putting them both in the deck and having them work together is not going to happen very often. That is going to be incredibly rare. Now, if I got one of those and I had this, I probably would go for it. Because if it happens, it's going to be really cool. It just is going to be probably hard to make happen. Commander, that's where this card makes sense to me. You have a little more flexibility when it comes to colors. You can run a whole lot of different planeswalkers. Maybe you can even protect this a little bit and you can start getting a lot of free effects and doing some crazy things. That's where it seems fun to me. Still requires some setup, sure, but I do think you could have a good time with this card in a commander deck, especially a casual planeswalker commander theme or something like that. So I would try it out there, but yeah, it is a tough card to make work. Even though when it does work, it's going to be a lot of fun and I'm sure a lot of stories will come from it. Forbears Blade. This costs 3. It's an artifact equipment rare. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has a vigilance and trample. When equipped creature dies, attach Forbears Blade to target creature you control. Equip cost of 3. This is not bad. I'm going to say I don't think I play this in standard though, because again, it is dependent on me having some creatures to put it on. Costs 3 to cast and 3 to equip, and that might be a little too much, a little too slow. Once it's on creatures though, if I have a lot of creatures, maybe small tokens or something like that, this gets pretty aggressive, because now I can attack with, even if it's a 1/1, I can now attack it with a 4/1 Vigilance Trample. When it dies, I just move it to the next one, so on and so forth. That can be really annoying, right? So I could see this being maybe fun for casual play in Commander. I could see this being good in Limited, actually. Maybe not a first, second, or even third pick in some packs, but maybe middle of the pack. Like you pick this up, especially if you're going wide with Goblin tokens or something like that. Then hey, why not? I would give it a try. It does require a little setup and a little bit of your resources, but once it gets on a creature, as long as you can keep producing small creatures, it can be very formidable. Okay, this next group of cards is a cycle of uncommon lands that are oozing with nostalgia. All of the art is callback to lore. All the abilities where you sacrifice the land is also a callback to older abilities. These are really cool. I think they're all decent in Limited. We'll talk about them individually in a second. Some maybe even could see standard play. Some are a little bit too slow though, I think. So let's talk about this first one. Memorial to Folly. This one, of course, land uncommon, enters the battlefield tapped. Tap, add a black mana. Black and 2, tap sacrifice, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So an ability that's reminiscent of Raise Dead and those style of abilities. First off, the art is amazing. It's Martyr's Tomb with a broken down Urza and Gerard statue on there. It looks like it's weathered from time. It looks really, really cool. Where do you play this card? I want to start with Commander because I think it's actually pretty good there. In Commander, bringing a creature back from your graveyard to your hands could mean you're getting some strong things back. Also, too, there's ways to recur land a lot of times in Commander. Even the simplest ways like Crucible of Worlds or Ramanap Excavator, for example. Excavator is even standard legal, although I don't really think that's going to be a thing in standard. As we go through these cards, I think you'll see that ultimately these are probably a little too slow most of the time. But I do think Commander players are going to be taking notice of this one. Limited, yeah, this is fine to play in Limited. Coming into play tap will slow down your deck, and I think for Limited, I'm going to give you a broad blanket for all 5 of these cards we're about to talk about. I think if you're in the color, for the most part, run them, unless you're in a really, really hyper-aggressive build and you don't want to slow down. So coming into play tap slows you down. Usually that's not a huge drawback when it comes to draft and seal, but some decks won't want that. Most, though, are going to be fine with it, and the extra ability you get later, which you can actually activate on the fly, is kind of awesome. Standard with this one, I think it is a little too slow, unfortunately. The coming into play tapped, as well as grabbing the creature back from the graveyard, it just feels like, even though the 3 is not that bad for that ability, it just feels like it is conditional on having a creature you want to grab back from the graveyard. Of course, then again, if Divest starts doing really well, then maybe you see more decks running this, so I won't count it completely out, but it does feel a tad slow. Also, another thing to consider with all these cards is the fact that the ability can't be countered by conventional means. I guess Disallow could still do it, but normal counter spells can't really interact with abilities coming off lands, which is pretty cool. Memorial to Genius. Okay, this one, of course, the original Tellurian Academy was destroyed. This is maybe Teleria West or another one of the academies that's in the picture of their Urza statue in the background looming over. Looks really cool. And this one, of course, uncommon land, enters the battlefield tapped, tap for blue, pay a blue and 4, tap sack, draw 2 cards. Now this one I do think is standard playable. It has an inspiration effect. You can do it on the fly at the end of your opponent's turn. And I do think a card like this could see play. I realize Arch of Araska exists, but I do think this one in some ways is more consistent. Although, be it a little bit slower because it comes into play tapped. Although it gives you color, so there's the plus side. Ultimately, I think I'd rather play this, honestly. Given the choice between the two. Of course, you could also play both, I suppose. But given the choice, I actually do like this card quite a bit. I think control decks will be able to play this in standard. Limited, it's going to be great for you there as well, no doubt. Memorial to Glory. All right, this is another really sweet piece of art with the Gerard statue in the courtyard there. And the ability reminiscent of Raise the Alarm. This time you have a land, uncommon, comes into play tapped, tap for a white, pay a white and 3, tap, sacrifice, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. The ability is great here. A little too slow, a little too expensive though for standard, unfortunately. You might want this in a white weenie or a token deck, but unfortunately those are the decks that don't want this to come into play tapped. They have turn 1 plays they can go with, and they don't want to forego those to put this out there, unfortunately. Limited though, yeah, sign me up, especially if I have a go wide plan or something like that. Memorial to Unity with the Eladamri statue in the forest. Land, uncommon, comes into play tap, tap for a green, green and 2, sacrifice it. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put it into your hand, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So very reminiscent of Commune with Nature. This one I'm on the fence for standard. Maybe it could see play in like a Stompy deck or something like that. Because those decks will have Llanowar Elves to be able to make up for maybe the mana and accelerate you a little bit. But again, you kind of want to get your Elves out as soon as possible probably in those decks too. So do you want to take the turn off, maybe turn 1 and put this into play tapped? I don't know. That doesn't feel necessarily great to me. However, on the flip side, if I need to hit my creatures, this is going to help me do that. And it's not that expensive, green and 2, especially in those type of decks. So I'd at least want to test it. I do think it has potential, and maybe it does see standard play. Again, in limited, this will be very good for you. You'll be happy to run it. Memorial to War with a Corona statue. Looks really menacing. Lands, uncommon, Memorial to War, enters the battlefield tapped. Tap, red mana and 4, tap, sacrifice, destroy target land. Has a Stone Rain effect attached to it there. A little expensive, I think, especially when you have Field of Ruin in the format for standard, so I don't really see doing that. In limited, though, even if you don't main deck this for whatever reason, if your opponent's getting greedy on colors or has a problematic non-basic land you want to deal with, side it in, but I could see myself just playing this. Now, red is maybe, out of all the colors, the one that hurts the most by playing a land that comes into play tapped. So I could see where there are times where this is in my sideboard, maybe more so than the other 4. But at the same time, like, in limited, a lot of times this won't hurt you that much, especially if you do have a more of a mid-rangey build or something. So I do think it's very main deckable regardless in draft and sealed. I think in draft, these are all probably middle of the pack pickups. I don't think they're going to go super low in a pack typically. However, they're not going to be like first picks, people grabbing them either. So I think you can wait to see what colors you're in and then maybe grab one of these here and there. It could be decent for you. Alright, with that being said, those are the cards for today. So we're going to be back tomorrow with another video recapping everything that happens within the next 24 hours. So I will see you then. Until next time, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.